What's going on YouTube? It's Teach back again with another video, and today we are talking about and grading Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest 2023 NFL mock draft. Always excited to see what Mel's thinking, and I'm always excited to talk about it as well. So hopefully you all are excited. Hit that like button if you enjoyed today's video. Subscribe if you're new, looking for more mock drafts and draft coverage in general. And of course, comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who's your favorite squad? Do you like the pick Mel gave your favorite team? And also, who's going too high? Who's falling too low? Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. But pull that down, let's waste no time, and we get to pick number one. CJ Stroud is the betting favorite, so this doesn't surprise me whatsoever. I've said plenty of times, I think Stroud is the most accurate quarterback in this class, and I could totally see, a coaching staff made up of Frank Reich, Josh McCown, Jim Caldwell as a senior advisor. I could see where that's the trait where they're like, if that guy can just put the ball where we need him to, we'll orchestrate everything else. We'll get guys open with our scheme, yada, yada, yada. He's also got the stature, right, of a guy you want to take, at number one. To me, if it was me, the pick's Bryce Young, and it's pretty comfortably Bryce Young. But nevertheless, it's kind of harkening back to the Aiden Hutchinson, Trevon Walker thing, right? Trevon Walker's like 99th percentile in height, weight, athleticism, all that sort of stuff. So if he doesn't work out, it's like, well, he should have worked because of all those things. Versus if you draft, the 5'10", and really his playing weight's probably around 190-ish, Bryce Young, and he gets hurt, that could cost you a job, right? Like versus if you go with Stroud, who has the size, has a solid arm, has the accuracy, doesn't work out, it feels like an anomaly versus your fault. So I can totally see where Carolina's going to go that route, and that makes it really easy for Houston at 2. I do think ultimately this is who they would take if they had the number one overall pick. That is just strictly an assumption, so who knows, but I do think it's going to be those guys going 1-2. So both those franchises that desperately need to get their future franchise quarterback. Trade here with the Colts and Cardinals trading places. Would be a win for the Cardinals because you move back one spot. They're going to take Will Anderson, I would have to assume, and then you get more draft capital out of it. So I wouldn't hate that whatsoever for Arizona. And for Indianapolis, you guarantee that no one's going to leapfrog you for your guy, which I really thought this was going to end up being Anthony Richardson once I saw that trade, but it's Will Levis. I'm pretty sure Mel has Levis as his QB1. Levis is my QB2. I do think there's a little bit of projection in there. Not even a little bit. There is a fair amount of projection. Taking him from a rough situation at Kentucky, saying, okay, well, he's got the skill sets. He's got the traits. Once he gets into a better environment, he'll be better because of it. No guarantee that it will play out like that, but I think that's part of why Mel is making the projection that he's making. That's part of the reason I like Levis as my QB2. And him going to Indianapolis, good offensive line, good run game, good wide receivers, or at least comparatively speaking, better wide receiver talent than he had in 2022 at Kentucky, and get, back to where, he was in 2021, where he had Wan'Dale Robinson, had Darian Kinnard in the offensive line, and, just a few of those pieces still intact, and he looked a whole lot better. So I'm hoping that once you do improve that ecosystem and get him in a better environment, that he'll become a better player because of it. And, he does kind of feel like a Colt. Maybe that's just because he wore the blue and white at Kentucky. Arizona does take Will Anderson. What a win this would be. You get one of the blue chip defenders and you get extra assets out of it. For a team that desperately needs draft capital and a superstar on the defensive side, this would be a win of all wins. Seattle then takes Anthony Richardson. Call me a chump, I guess. I haven't been able to work this into a mock recently, but I still love the idea, especially if it's Anthony Richardson still on the board for Seattle. I'd love to see them take that shot at QB the future, especially here at 5, where it's like you could take Tyree Wilson. You could take, Lucas Van Ness maybe, or I doubt Seattle's going to take a corner this high, but maybe. One of those other positions where it's like, I don't love that value at 5. Quarterback's always, pretty easy, rationale, and especially in a class like this where I've been saying for a while, I think we get 4 quarterbacks going in the top 10, and it's seeming more and more likely that there could be 4 in the top 7, or maybe even 4 in the top 5 like we have here. So would love to see Seattle make this pick. I think Richardson should play right away, but that's just because to me he looks like a guy that only has 1 year starting experience, and I want to shake that off of him. But nevertheless, if Seattle takes him, you have him sit behind Geno, who, consummate pro's pro, right? Like that's the guy to have him work with. So would love that type of mentor-mentee relationship, and hopefully that does unlock the best of Anthony Richardson. And man, this would be really, really fun to see what this means for the trajectory of Seattle, because I think Geno keeps you relevant and playoff competitive for the next year or two. But Anthony Richardson, if he's a hit, you're talking playoff competitive for the next decade, right? So we'd love to see Seattle take that type of pick, and it's the easiest selection to have a rationale for why that player went 5 versus some of the other names. Could take Jalen Carter, of course. That would be another one where, talent-wise, if Carter went 5 to Seattle, makes a ton of sense. And same thing here for Detroit at 6. And he's kind of he's a better version of Jarran Reed. So if you're Seattle, I don't know if Reed should sway you away from Carter. And then for the Lions, he's the perfect 3-tech to put between, Hutchinson and McNeil, or on the other side between Houston and McNeil. But it's going to come down to the character, the interview stuff that we're just not privy to, unfortunately, because I would love to know what those meetings look like, how teams stand on his maturity, and what they think of the off-the-field situation. Does that match up with who they thought he was when they got to talk to him? All that sort of stuff. It's just not information that I have, so I can't really speak on it. As a player, perfect fit here in Detroit. And I do think, where this guy maybe does have some maturity concerns, I think going to a great culture like a Seattle at 5 or like a Detroit at 6 makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people are kind of out on it, out on him, that is, and I understand that. I don't think he makes it past Philadelphia at 10. I'm having a hard time thinking he makes it past 6, to be honest. I still think Seattle and Detroit would love to get this guy on their roster just from a football perspective. And, that ultimately does win out overall over a lot of other things. But then, Chicago at 9, Philadelphia at 10. That's like the absolute floor. That's the basement. I think 5 and 6 kind of the floor for Carter. And then I think 9 and 10 is kind of more than the basement, honestly. It's like the underground nuclear hideout for Carter. So yeah, I still think he's going somewhere in the top 10, which, he's obviously always something to talk about, and a lot of things to still kind of unravel there. And then we get the Raiders taking Christian Gonzalez. Yeah, I'd like this fit a lot. Got to give Patrick Graham a chance, and the Raiders would kind of be the odd team out here. Could certainly draft a quarterback, but I just can't see in an offseason where you pay Jimmy Garoppolo. Yes, not a lucrative deal by any stretch. It's not like inheriting Aaron Rodgers and his contract, but nonetheless, I don't think you can pay Jimmy Garoppolo and give up draft capital to move up to 3 or anything like that, or 5 for that matter. So, yeah, I think they're going to stick and pick, and if the 4 quarterbacks are gone, then, well, that's why we got Jimmy Garoppolo, right? So, if the board played out like this, Christian Gonzalez, I think, is the direction I would go here. Him or Tyree Wilson's interesting, but, man, the Raiders just need a legitimate CB1, and Christian Gonzalez totally has that potential. And then the Falcons take Devon Witherspoon. Man, I would take Joey Porter Jr. here as the second corner off the board, but pairing up Witherspoon with A.J. Terrell and that boundary corner duo is really, really scary. On top of that, Jesse Bates is like the ball hawk, playmaking safety over top. Man, that is really, really fun. So don't hate this pick whatsoever. I would go with a different corner, but between Wilson and Witherspoon, maybe I'd go Wilson just because you can pair him up with Ebiketie. Becomes a really nice 1-2 punch. One guy wins with power, one guy wins with speed and finesse, but adding a corner is definitely not something that Atlanta can do to make me upset. Then the Chicago Bears take Paris Johnson Jr. Yeah, especially with Carter off the board, I think this makes this decision super, super easy. I think if Carter, proliferates and stays on the board till 9, then you have a conversation. But you draft Paris Johnson Jr. Maybe if you like Braxton Jones enough, you flip him over to right tackle, or maybe you do the same for Paris Johnson Jr. I don't know. I would keep Paris Johnson Jr. at left tackle and then move Braxton Jones over to right tackle. But it comes down to comfort because, as much as traditional thinking will say, left tackle, that's the more important one. You can move defensive linemen across the entire offensive line, right? So if there's a mismatch, teams are going to be smart and they're going to line up their best edge rusher against your weakest tackle, right? Like they're just going to take advantage of that. So just having good tackles in general is good. So really it just comes down to who is more comfortable on the right side, whether it's Jones or Paris Johnson Jr. But we'll love that fit no matter what for Chicago, and he's my OT1, so we'd really like it from that perspective. Then the Eagles take Peter Skoronski. They could stand to add a guard, and Isaac Seumalo leaving, and Peter Skoronski, probably the best moving tackle, slash interior offensive lineman in this class. It comes down to how you feel about him. I think he can stick a tackle, but that being said, if he moves inside to guard, he could become an awesome guard. Like he could be an elite guard, no doubt about it. And it comes to, it's kind of like the Quentin Nelson, Zach Martin, Marshall Yonda from years and years and years ago. What's more valuable, the great guard or the pretty good tackle? And, depending on how Skoronski's career plays out, I'd be really interested. If we get 2 years in maybe, and he's just like solid, do you kind of think about the idea of maybe kicking him inside and making him into a high level, Pro Bowl, all pro level guard? Again, no answers to that yet. We'll have to wait a couple of years, but that is a really fascinating conversation. But the Eagles prioritize offensive line, and if they make this pick, do I think they can go in a different direction? Sure. But would it be on brand for Philadelphia? Absolutely. And would it get a positive grade for me? Absolutely. He can play guard right away, be an Isaac Seumalo replacement. Keep in mind, he was, recruited to Northwestern to play center. I think he can play anywhere on the O-line, left tackle, all the way through to the other side at right tackle. So he could be a starter right away for Philadelphia. And then, maybe with some time, he becomes the Lane Johnson replacement, right? So I think it gives Philadelphia and that offensive line something they prioritize, a lot of flexibility now, but also down the line. And the Titans take Tyree Wilson. So, yeah, Wilson, a little bit of a faller here, but he would be a really interesting add. Power rusher with, Arden Key coming over from Jacksonville as a speed rusher. Harold Landry, he can do a lot of different things. Pretty good at dropping into coverage, too. But, if that trio stays healthy, that's a really fun pass rush, combo for Titans fans to kind of root for. Tennessee's in an interesting spot. I don't know what direction they really want to go this season, lose or win now, because if you were going to just blow it up, like, why do you still have Ryan Tannehill? But that being said, they've moved on from a lot of pieces, but also acquired a lot of pieces. It may just be a new look offensive line, but they've lost a tackle, gained a tackle, lost a guard, gained a guard, lost a linebacker, gained a linebacker. So it feels like they're trying to maintain status quo. And if they add Tyree Wilson, that pass rush gets really, really scary. Also a guy who can kick inside. So, working with Mike Vrabel, I'd be really interested to see how, that type of a great head coach and that guy who comes from a defensive background, how he would want to utilize a guy like Tyree Wilson. Then Houston sticks and picks it and takes Nolan Smith. I do think this is kind of a sneaky trade down spot, and especially, like Joey Porter Jr. is still available like he is in this mock. I could see a corner needy team wanting to jump up, and Houston saying, hey, we'll take assets, let's slide back. Might be something you see in this upcoming mock I do this weekend. But Nolan Smith would be really, really happy with this. Houston needs pass rush help. He's also a high character, team captain of Georgia. So getting that type of a leader as well feels like it goes a long way. High level run defender already, and a lot of upside as a pass rusher. Freaky athlete, highly touted recruit. Would love this, and it could be that cornerstone piece that Houston's looking for in that pass rush department. And then the Jets take Broderick Jones. Yeah, no real surprise. How many times have you clicked on one of these videos and seen a tackle mock to the Jets? If you took a shot for every time you did it, good night moon. So yeah, no real big surprise here. But dude, Broderick Jones and Mekhi Becton, if all went according to plan and they stayed healthy, that might be like the most, insane, just from a strength profile perspective, the most ridiculously strong tackle duo in the NFL. Now, obviously, there's a lot of tackles who are yoked out of their minds that would make a puny little pipsqueak like me look like nothing. But that being said, Becton, freaky athlete, huge frame, and known for his strength. And the same thing here with Broderick Jones. Has the frame, has the strength. A little raw as a pass protector, but I think with time that can be worked on. And given the size and given the athletic ability, there is a reason that he's going to go this high despite not being, maybe the most polished pass protector in this class. Then Joey Porter Jr. does eventually come off the board. It's to the New England Patriots. I would wonder if they make this pick. They bring back Jonathan Jones. Already have Marcus Jones. Jack Jones was a pretty successful day 3 pick last year. Has he earned a spot, as a, week 1 starter on the outside? I would tend to think so. But nevertheless, if Bill Belichick wants to add a man press corner to the caliber that we think Joey Porter Jr. can be, I'm not mad about it, not whatsoever. And maybe we can go back to Bill Belichick and the old school, man press heavy, you double team the number one, the opposing team's number 1 wide receiver, and then your best corners matched up with their number 2. Can we harken back to that day? I don't think it's impossible, but it does feel like this team is maybe kind of shifting towards that zone heavy front. The NFL in general kind of is, and if they felt like they needed to get better, why bring back the pieces that they already have? So, can they get better than Jack Jones? Sure, maybe, and that's Joey Porter Jr. here, but also I'm looking at wide receiver. Brian Branch is kind of interesting here, so I think other directions they could go, but like I said, if they add a man press corner like a Joey Porter Jr., not mad whatsoever. Then we get to pick 15. That is the Green Bay Packers taking Lucas Van Ness. Yep, I've said plenty of times, Nolan Smith, Lucas Van Ness, I'm kind of keen in them as the truest of Green Bay Packers first round selections. And with Smith off the board, it makes it really easy. LVN would probably be the route I would go here for Green Bay. Inside out versatility, young guy too, great ability to turn that get off on the offensive line, or at the line of scrimmage rather, into a lot of power. Has played on the inside at Iowa, so I wonder, if that's something Green Bay would covet. Could he be like a 3-4 D end or someone that in your nickel, 4-man front, could he kick in and line up over a guard? I think that potential is there. But this opens up the door to move on from Preston Smith. You got to draft, 2 and 3 years ahead. And drafting Lucas Van Ness now allows you to be able to save money in a year's time by moving on from Preston Smith. So yeah, I like this pick a ton, and it's one that I've mocked plenty of times. And then Emmanuel Forbes goes to Washington. So this is Forbes over Deonte Banks. This is Forbes over Cam Smith, Keely Ringo. Not the corner I would go with here, but I do think Washington needs to add a corner. And to me, it would be Deonte Banks. I would just add Deonte Banks to that defense right here if this was me on the clock here for Washington. But Emmanuel Forbes has a ton of ball production, and yeah, he's light, and I don't know about a 166-pound corner going to the first round, but crazier things have happened. And he may not be the number 4 corner for me, but if that's how Washington saw it, you would just have to trust their board. I do think they can stand to get better in the secondary. Already have a crazy pass rush. Now, if you get at least one shutdown number 1 corner in the mix, man, that defense gets really, really scary. And if they think Forbes and the ball production at Mississippi State signals that he can be that shutdown playmaking corner and kind of be like our Trevon Diggs, right? Then I think it's worth taking a shot on him. Then at 17, Pittsburgh takes Deonte Banks. This would be awesome. As a Steelers fan, this would be my CB4, and would love to see him still be on the board here at 17. And it would set up a really interesting secondary where you have Pat Peterson, who is, gotten older, of course, so he's not the man press corner of old. This is not Pat Peterson of like 8 years ago, where he might have been in that conversation for the best man press corner in the league, right up there with Darrelle Revis. Like, we were having those conversations way back when. And then you have Deonte Banks on the other side. So Pat Peterson's become this kind of zone specialist because he's lost a step, and that's what he was asked to do a lot in Minnesota. And then Deonte Banks, who runs a 4.35, has man press corner written all over him, 200 pounds, 6 foot. And that becomes an interesting dilemma. Like, I would just wonder what Pittsburgh's trying to do with those two guys. So would I like the corner pick? Absolutely. Would I be a little confused about how this pairing's going to play out? Yes. But that being said, even if, the plan was to bring into Pat Pete, because they want to be a zone-heavy, secondary, I think with Deonte Banks' athleticism and potential playmaking ability, anytime you're that quick and that fast and have solid size and solidly length arms as well, you talk about that guy in his zone defense, can he be our playmaker? So I'd be interested to see how quickly he could adapt and set into that defense, right? Or would it take a little bit of time and we don't see a whole lot of him early on? So I'd be fascinated to see, with the addition of Deonte Banks, are you going to be a man-heavy team, or are you going to fully go zone-heavy, and that's why you brought in Pat Peterson? I'd just be interested to see how that relationship and how that scheme would ultimately fold out with Pat Peterson and Banks on the outside. Anyways, talked way too long there. Lions take Michael Mayer. I know Detroit fans are not going to be crazy about this. I don't think it's a bad idea to add a tight end. I know a lot of people are saying, they moved on from TJ Hockenson because it wasn't a priority, and that may truly be the case. And I don't doubt that whatsoever. We're going to find out this offseason. We're going to find out this draft, for that matter. Because if they take Michael Mayer here at 18, that rhetoric's going to turn around real quick. But if they forego on tight end and draft a guy on day 3, or they don't draft a tight end at all, then that's going to be the answer to our question that, it's just not something that Ben Johnson's really coveting right now. But would I like Michael Mayer? Yes, I actually would. Do I think there's other directions they can go? For sure. No doubt about it. But if they were to add Michael Mayer after taking Jalen Carter and addressing that defensive line, they've already done a lot of work to the secondary and free agency. This does feel like a spot where they can definitely get better, at least just talking names on paper, names on roster, and you get a pretty interesting weapon in the middle of the field on top of Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's this underneath intermediate, awesome weapon to have. So instead of going wide receiver to find that extra element to work over the middle of the field, is it tight end Michael Mayer? I think it's not a bad value here at 18, and I would just be really interested to see if we're going to see a tight end somewhere in the top 100 picks drafted by Detroit. Wouldn't be mad if they took Mayer. He ran the same 40 time as Hockenson, pretty good blocker, a lot of the same things that they may have liked about Hockenson, different regime, of course, both in the front office and as the head coach. But just because it's, different pieces in place doesn't mean that, Michael Mayer is not going to have fans, and maybe that's, part of the reason that they decided to move on from Hockenson. They saw a good draft class ahead. They were like, hey, there's a lot of tight ends in this year's class that we like, so let's get what we can for Hockenson now. So I don't know. I'm throwing out hypotheticals here, but I'd be really interested to see if they did go this direction in late April. Then we get to Tampa Bay. Darnell Wright. Yeah, I'd be more than happy with this pick. You would have to flip Tristan Wirfs over the left side. And again, harking back, I don't really think there is a major advantage left tackle versus right tackle, because smart defensive coaches and good defenses in general are going to line up their best pass rusher against your worst pass protector. So adding in the Darnell Wright, yes, you're going to have to flip Tristan Wirfs over, but he's going to fetch a bag whenever they start getting into those extension talks, whether he's a left tackle or right tackle. And if that matter, if you feel like it's an easier contract to justify, which they should just pay the man anyways, but if they feel like it's easier to justify that by moving him to left tackle, I could see them prioritizing Darnell right here. I would go Anton Harrison. You keep Wirfs where he's at. Harrison, to me, my OT3, that may not have the greatest strength profile in this class, but is a NFL-ready pass protector. Darnell Wright has great strength, good movement skills, solid size. Like, he does a lot of things well. I just don't think he's as, surefire as a pass protector as Anton Harrison, because I think part of the reason I'm a little bit lower on Darnell Wright is I think that Josh Heupel offense does a lot to kind of keep him clean. So, we'll have to wait and see once he gets to the NFL, but I think there might be a little bit of an adjustment period going from that Heupel offense at Tennessee to the NFL level. But nevertheless, if the Bucs go tackle, makes a lot of sense. Definitely going to need to address that position after moving on from Donovan Smith. So left tackle, right tackle, I don't think they can really go wrong there. Seattle takes Jackson Smith and Jigba. Yeah, I love this, and I'm actually recording this during Ohio State's pro day, and he just ran somewhere between 4.48 and 4.52, which this whole time I've been saying, I've been told that he's going to run 4.5s, 4.6s, and that's been kind of the general consensus. So the fact that he's running better than that, that's fantastic. And he's going to shoot on my wide receiver boards because of that, because now he's much better of an athlete than I would have anticipated when it comes to a long speed department. And then you throw in a 6.57 3-cone. That type of short area explosiveness is insane. You put this guy in the slot, and that Seattle offense with Lockett and Metcalf on the outside, and I just legitimately don't know how defenses are going to try to slow those guys down, because if you're trying to, take away the underneath stuff and not let Jackson Smith and Jigba win the game from the slot, well, I mean, DK Metcalf can beat you over the top at any moment. And then if you are trying, and same thing for Tyler Lockett for that matter, but if you are also trying to take away that over-the-top passing game, then there's going to be so much room underneath for Jackson Smith and Jigba to eat, but also for Kenneth Walker to be able to run, through light boxes, It becomes a really scary Seattle offense to try to contain. So I would really love to see them do JSN. If he's available at 20, you just paid Geno Smith. Let's give him one more weapon and really give him an awesome and dynamic offense that can win at multiple levels of the field. Then we get to 21. The Chargers take Dalton Kincaid. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt this whatsoever. I'd like to see them add, that speed wide receiver. But if they think, hey, Josh Palmer's going to take that step forward and he's got enough speed, he can do that. Or it's DeAndre Carter maybe carrying that load a little bit more for us this year. And, Kellen Moore is going to unlock that now that we got a new OC in the mix. Maybe. Gerald Everett's getting older. Donald Parham has been kind of used sparingly, but they do bring him back as well. So if they want to add Dalton Kincaid, I'm not mad about it whatsoever. Really good athlete, used heavily at Utah. Good route runner, hard to bring down after they catch too. So he adds a different type of skill set, I think, that tight end room. And just one more weapon that you would have to account for when taking on the Chargers. Those two main wide receivers, Allen and Williams. In this case, Kincaid. If they still have Eckler, then throw Eckler in the mix. And then whoever may step up as that number 3 wide receiver, ideally someone who can push the ball deep down the field, be a speed threat in that offense, and force Herbert to kind of flip fields and take advantage of his arm strength. Ravens take Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is pretty much the guy I've been mocking to do the Chargers for the last 3 months, it feels like. But if he goes to Baltimore, also not mad about it, because just like the Chargers, Baltimore needs that speed wide receiver in the offense, just for different reasons. I think for LA, it's like we need to clearly egg Herbert on to try to get him to push the ball down the field. For Baltimore, it's like, man, we are such a run-heavy offense that defenses are going to creep towards the line of scrimmage. We had Hollywood Brown, who was kind of that over-the-top trump card. When you cheated too close, he was behind you. We need to get that guy back to the offense, and I think Zay Flowers absolutely could be that dude. So would love that pick there for Baltimore. And then same thing for Quentin Johnson. If they took Quentin Johnson at 22, I'd like that a ton. But here he goes to the Vikings, and pretty sure the last mock I reacted to, the Trevor Sikkema one, he also went to Minnesota. So interesting. I don't necessarily know if this would play out, but if he does, man, one, you'd be adding a second wide receiver to that offense, which Justin Jefferson needs help. Adam Thielen has lost a step. We'll see how he does in Carolina. Probably going to be the slot guy there. But he just was not enough playing on the outside right now, just because he's getting older, lost some athletic ability. It happens to all of them. Happens to just about every NFL player ever. So getting Quentin Johnston, you're getting Justin Jefferson, that second wide receiver, to take the load off of his shoulders just a little bit. But also I mentioned that Sikkema, grade the mock video from last week. His type of over-the-top speed, even just as a clear-out guy. Like Justin Jefferson does not need any help getting open in the intermediate parts of the field. But man, if Quentin Johnson is running clear-out routes for Justin Jefferson, that's going to be unfair. That's going to cause a whole lot of headaches. So if he does make his way all the way down to 23, I would love to see Kevin O'Connell be like, no, that is a guy that can make Justin Jefferson legitimately just unfair and unguardable in the intermediate parts of the field, partially because we're helping scheming him open, and partially because he might be one of the best route runners in football. If he's not 1, 2, he's certainly somewhere in that 3 to 5 range, right? So, this would just make for schematic nightmares, I think, with that Vikings offense. The Jags take Will McDonald. Yeah, this feels like a really sound Arden Key replacement, Caleb Von Chase on do-over, however you want to phrase it. think this brings a lot of value to that Jags pass rush. Travon Walker is inside out flexibility, pretty big guy too, at 6'5", 275, that, perfect build for an edge. So I think he could, when you're in your base, play 3-4 D end, or when you're getting into your nickels, passing situations, 4-man fronts, he could kick inside and line up over a guard. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. And then, McDonald and Josh Allen are your guys there on the outside, and both guys with freaky speed and a lot of bend too. So we like this a ton. McDonald lined up a lot inside at Iowa State, so I think he's going to find a whole other gear at the NFL level once he's playing his true position out wide. Then we get to the Giants. Jordan Addison. Yeah, again, another hunch assumption here, just like with Bryce Young and the Houston Texans. But if the Giants can have any wide receiver, I think they want Jordan Addison mix. He's just the most polished route runner in the class. I mean, there's a lot of other good route runners in this class, no doubt, but to me, Addison is NFL ready without a doubt in my mind. Sure, he's a little lighter than maybe he was listed at college, and the 4.49 40 at his combine wasn't great. Maybe he can improve that at the pro day, but I'm just looking at his tape and I'm like, yep, this guy is ready to be an intermediate to deep level route running element to an offense. He has enough speed. I know the 4.49 isn't gaudy, but I think he plays fast enough to where he's going to be able to get open deep down the field and add that element to the offense. What's interesting with the Giants is you have so many of these pieces coming back, and are they really going to prioritize wide receiver in round one with all those returning pieces? So I don't know, and I'm kind of starting to lean towards no, but maybe they bring back those pieces, and then it's a second rounder for Nuke Hopkins or something like that, and then they can use this first rounder elsewhere, maybe a corner, maybe Drew Sanders as a blitzing linebacker, feels like a good fit for Wink Martindale, but I'm just really curious if wide receiver is still their number one main priority for the first round, given that they brought back a lot of the pieces that were already there. Anyways, moving on to Dallas, they're going to take Adetomiwa Adebawore. Man, for how much Dan Quinn utilizes stunts and twists, this type of an athletic interior / edge rusher could be really interesting. To me, Adetomiwa Adebawore is going to play that 3-tech or wider. He's going to be 3-tech out to the 5. But in that 4-3 defense, man, you could use him in a lot of crafty ways. And 280 pounds, not the heaviest dude, but I think he could still play on the interior, especially when he runs a 4.49 40. And there's not going to be a guard that can keep up with that. Oh, and did I mention almost 34-inch arms? This guy can stick it to guards, who, again, keep in mind, when tackles don't have long enough arms, we kick them inside to play off interior offensive line. They're going to have fits. They're going to have a chance against Adebawore. So this would be a really, really interesting ad. But I got to say, Bijan Robinson feels like the next shiny toy Jerry Jones is looking to add to the playground there in Dallas. So a little curious that he didn't go there, and he ends up being the next pick to Buffalo. Again, I watch these and consume these mock drafts just as you are consuming it here with me. So that's a little fun. But Bijan to the Bills, yeah, sure. I don't hate it. Add him to the receiving element in that offense, and he is certainly better than James Cook, but I'm looking at holes in the offensive line. I'm looking at, maybe a potential secondary ad linebacker. Also, Trenton Simpson, could he be your Jermaine Edmonds replacement? I think there's other directions you can go here after you just spent, a top 100 pick last year at running back, and it felt like James Cook was really starting to figure it out. Again, that said, if they took Bijan because he fell all the way to 27, that is really good value because he is one of the best football players in this class. You have to take away, the position value to say that, but even accounting for the position value, he should go somewhere in the first round. And I think he's honestly off the board before 27, if I'm just being frank. And again, it kind of feels like Dallas is, Jerry Jones is, hey, I've added Stephon Gilmore. I've added, Brandon Cooks. Now I want to go get my shiny toy and my running back to replace Zeke because that signing didn't work out. So I'm kind of thinking that's where Dallas ends up going. But hey, let's say Bijan does make it to the Bills. Not a bad ad whatsoever, but it does make rounds 2 and 3 that much more paramount to hit on some of those other holes on the roster. Bengals take Darnell Washington, so 3 tight ends in round 1. Yeah, I don't doubt that it happens. A lot of my mocks, I go pretty much 1 tight end in the first round and then 2 to 3 in the second and then 1 to 2 in the third. It's a good tight end group. And there's going to be a lot of them that come off the board in the top 100. So if we have 3 in the first round, I can't say I'll be surprised. I mean, it may be a little shocking, but nothing that's has my jaw on the floor or anything like that. And for the Bengals, you basically acquire a 6th offensive lineman here, and they're shopping Jonah Williams, so it seems like they're going to roll with Orlando Brown Jr., Leo Collins, and maybe have a little bit of a battle. Maybe Jackson Carman can work his way into that right tackle competition. To me, he's just probably better as a guard, but nevertheless, Darnell Washington serves for really good right tackle insurance, just in case that does become a problem throughout the season, just because Darnell Washington is the best blocking tight end that I think I've seen in my time of watching and evaluating and covering the NFL draft. So awesome awesome type of add to that offense, but also untapped potential as a receiver. Has good size, 6'7", 265, and moves well for that size. So wasn't asked to do a whole lot in the receiving department at Georgia, but maybe there's something more that you can add. And for Cincinnati, you're going to have to move on from Tyler Boyd next offseason. So adding a guy who can win those same areas as Boyd does now, I think is paramount this offseason. Then we get to the Saints. Brian Brzee, yeah, I like this fit a ton as a good David Onyemata replacement. They run that 4-3, so I think he could be one of those D tackles. And I think right away, Brzee kind of gives you that run-stopping ability that you're going to lose with Onyemata. And then you get the exciting factor of, like, this guy is basically starting from zero as a pass rusher, so can we figure it out? And if you do, then this gets really interesting. I hope that this is a pick that the Saints keep him at D tackle. I've kind of theorized and pondered if they took Kalijah Kancey, could they add him to the edge rotation, or would he strictly play on the inside? Brzee played up and down the defensive line at Clemson, but I really hope they just kind of keep him on the interior. 6'5", 300, a little more than 300 pounds. That to me, that's an interior defensive lineman. But Kancey, it's a little different because you're talking about 6', 280. So that little bit of size, height, weight difference, I think does make enough of a factor. I'd rather see Brzee stick inside and be that David Onyemata replacement for New Orleans, and I think they're getting good value on him. Speaking of Kalijah Kancey, he becomes the next pick to the Eagles. I think he goes off the board before this, but it is kind of hard to find, a spot for 3 defensive tackles if you're going to, Jalen Carter, Kalijah Kancey, Brian Brzee. It is kind of hard to find, room for all those guys somewhere in the top 25 of a first-round mock. So if Kancey makes it all the way to Philadelphia, he is the perfect pass rush complement to Jordan Davis as this, huge refrigerator human being, and is there and drafted to be a high-level run defender. Kancey not going to do much in that department, but awesome get off, a lot of explosiveness, and also a polished pass rusher when it comes to a move set and using his hands. So becomes a really awesome 1-2 punch there on the inside. You can't have Fletcher Cox play forever. You've already lost Javon Hargrave, so Kancey feels like, kind of keeping that trend, or keeping that strength really for Philadelphia. Last pick to talk about, Felix Anudike-Uzomah. So yeah, for Kansas City, adding edge has been something I've done a ton here at 31, whether it's B.J. Ojulari, Keon White, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, Derek Hall. I've seen so many different edge rushers here, and I've mocked plenty of different edge rushers to the Chiefs. And I like the speed complement opposite of George Karlaftis. So for me, primarily, it's been Will McDonald if he makes it here. It's been Derek Hall, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, B.J. Ojulari. And with FAU's bend, that really does become the ultimate complement to Karlaftis, who is so violent with his hands and plays with so much strength, and started to get a little bit better towards the end of his rookie year. And then you add one of the bendiest edge rushers in this class who also has good get-off and a little bit of strength in his profile. So pretty nice skill set to complement Karlaftis. And Felix Anudike-Uzomah, pretty well-rounded guy too. I like the height weight that he checked in at the Combine, 6'3", 255. So not just this small, undersized edge rusher. I think he's got enough weight to be able to stick outside the edge, and hopefully he can grow as a run defender, because he did not do that a whole lot at a high level at Kansas State. But nonetheless, that is going to do it for my reaction to Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest mock draft. Man, I like a lot of the fits, and some of these ads are a little different, like Will McDonald going to Jacksonville. I know I like that one. I love Jackson Smith and Jigba going 20 to Seattle. So all in all, I think Mel did a pretty good job. Let's go with an 87. I feel like that's a fair enough grade for Kiper's work here this afternoon. But let me know what you would grade this mock draft down below in the comment section, whether it's a letter grade or a number grade, whatever's easiest. Let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. And of course, who's your favorite squad, and what do you think of the picks that Mel gave your favorite team? Love to hear your thoughts and feedback down below in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did, and subscribe if you're new, looking for more NFL draft content in your life. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and until next time, my name is Teej, and I'm signing off.